Han Solo's backstory has been explored fairly extensively in both canon and Legends material, but George Lucas's very first ideas for the character outside of the original Star Wars film were first recorded in August 1977, shortly after the movie's release. Today I'm going to run through Lucas's thoughts, and we'll see how they continue to inform how we see Han Solo over 40 years later. Lucas said, Han is around 30 years old. His parents might have been killed in a space battle with Han as the only survivor. There's no real record about where the space gypsies found him. They run through the galaxy picking up all sorts of odds and ends. They may have won him in a game, they may have cheated someone out of him and thought they would sell him. He was kind of like a slave. Although the gypsies loved him in their own way, they were also mean to him. They used him for their own ends, and he was very unhappy. They would send him out on dangerous missions, and they would make him beg in the streets and that sort of thing. They abandoned him to the Wookiees when he was about 7 years old. He lived with them for about 5 years. Pausing there, a lot of that story lines up with the Legends Han Solo trilogy by A.C. Crispin. Han was part of a gang run by a man named Garrus Shrike. Han eventually escaped on his own and was not abandoned to the Wookiees, but I also think it's interesting that Lucas may have revisited that idea that Han would live on Kashyyyk for a time as a young man when Revenge of the Sith was in production. There is concept art of what Han might look like that was created but never used for the film. But back to Lucas, from the time Han was 12 to the time he was 15, he was in the Space Academy. That's where he learned to be a star pilot, and he was very, very good. Only he was such a hustler that he got caught selling exam answers to the class. He also tried to race one of the professors in a spaceship and crashed it in the process. He didn't beat the professor, but he was booted out. Then he went around and did a lot of things, finally coming back to the Wookiees and meeting Chewbacca. Pausing again, the ages don't line up at this point. Han was 19 when he first entered the Imperial Academy and 22 when he left, but it is interesting that he still spent 3 years with the Empire, and certainly his rash behavior lines up with Lucas's ideas. George continues on, talking about some of Han's odd jobs here or there, but eventually we get to his time as a smuggler, which he fell into when he was about 20. Again, that lines up fairly well with Solo, a Star Wars story. Lucas claims one of his problems is that he gambles quite heavily and loses most of his money. He's tough and sharp, only he somehow never manages to scrape together enough money to get any power. As a matter of fact, I think he enjoys this. He's slightly self-destructive and enjoys being on the brink of disaster. So he's constantly putting everything he's got into some high-risk venture, and sometimes he wins and sometimes he loses. You might meet him and he may be worth 10 billion credits one day, and the next time you meet him, he's in debt up to his ears. Yep, that's Han alright. I like that Lucas points out that Han kind of likes that life, the risk-taking not just in flying, but everything. I think we definitely see that in the few canon stories about Han we've seen after Return of the Jedi. He struggles to adapt to family life. He misses the excitement and the adventure, which leads to a strain on his marriage and relationship with his son. Obviously, not everything Lucas stated in 1977 remained true. Looking through his complete notes, he continued to alter his ideas during the development of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, but I find it so interesting to see the similarities between stories that were written decades later and these initial notes. Because looking at the A.C. Crispin Legends books or Solo a Star Wars story, it's clear both versions of Han's story took some inspiration from Lucas's ideas. In Solo, Han is a member of a gang, he escapes and joins the Empire for 3 years, he becomes a smuggler around the age of 20. It's broad strokes, sure, but it follows the same basic beats, just condensed a bit to be told in a film. And it's not just Han's backstory, it's other characters and concepts as well, and I'll be covering them in other videos. Or if you want to read these notes for yourself, they're near the end of J.W. Rinsler's excellent book, The Making of Star Wars. But that's it for today. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.